reminds me way back when I was getting my MBA. We both got our MBAs from Goizueta. Mine was a full-time MBA. Yours was the executive MBA. And I remember in my last semester, I had a tax professor, and her name was Connie Kurtz. And it was corporate tax was the class. And she opened the class this way. She said, "This class is a mile long and an inch deep. The class is not designed to teach you how to do corporate tax. The class is designed to know what questions you need to be asking, either of your accountant, your CFO, whatever happens to be. So you're educated enough." I wanted to share that example because is that how you viewed your learning in those other parts of the business? Was it about knowing what questions to ask? Or did you feel like you needed to go in and become an expert in finance, for example?
Oh, no, I definitely knew that I was not going to become an expert at finance, but I needed to understand who was successful in each area and what made them successful at it. So, there's a lot of commonality. Are you a good leader? Are you clear with your message? Do you set expectations? That's true no matter what your role is in the company, if you're 2 years into your career or 30 years into your career. The other thing that people need to do across all these functions is receive feedback in a way that they're going to do something with that feedback, and share feedback in a way that they have an expectation whoever they're sharing with will do something with it.
This is the Leadership Foundry podcast. I'm your host this week, Brandon Smith, and our guest this week is Holly Bellmund. Holly is the president and COO of GLC Minerals. So Holly runs a mining company. And I loved our conversation today because not only did I learn a lot about the mining world, which I didn't know, but it was great to hear Holly talk about some of the leadership learnings she's had along the way, both unique to that industry, but also just learnings that she's had for herself. So I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did, and stay tuned to the end when I share some of my highlights with what really stood out for me from our conversation that we can start doing starting tomorrow to make us better leaders.
Welding together practical insights and powerful conversations to forge world-class leaders. This is the Leadership Foundry podcast.
Holly, so excited to have you on the show today. So excited to hear more about your leadership journey. So maybe a good starting place would be simply your journey. So for listeners that have maybe never met you before or don't know much about all the wonderful things you're up to these days, maybe share a little bit about kind of what you do today and then the story that ultimately got you there, because I think it's a really interesting one.
Well, thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate being able to talk to you about this. I think I actually have a fairly unusual journey. My current role is president and COO of GLC Minerals, and we are a company that turns stone into ingredients. So we purchase stone from quarries. They come to us through quarries that are owned by other companies on the Great Lakes. They're shipped to us by large vessels, and then when they arrive at our dock in Green Bay, the crew turns these stones into specific sizes and dried products that then are used as ingredients for a number of different applications. So that's what I'm currently doing today. And going back from there, I've worked in mining my entire career. I'm actually a geologist by degree who's always worked as a geologist. And I've always worked in mining and minerals processing, which is technically what we do now in the world of industrial minerals. So how did I get here today is a great question. I started off in the mining industry, working on finding quarries and sand and gravel pits in Colorado. So I was out with the drill rig, did that for a few years in Colorado, and then started working in environmental permitting for the mining company there. And we were making road construction materials. If you're not familiar or you don't think much about mining, you can't build roads without mined materials. So everywhere there's a road, something has come from a quarry or sand and gravel pit and produced that road. And same with the building foundation or your house or your driveway. So there's a lot of minerals moving around us all the time, whether or not we spend time thinking about mining. So then at the mining company, I worked in environmental permitting, and in that role, I worked with all the production groups to help them understand how to comply with environmental laws. And I also worked with the agencies on how to how to work with the regulatory groups on what we were doing. So it was a lot of like just kind of you on your own, working with a lot of different groups that didn't have much in common and explaining technical issues to people. And I also got to spend a lot of time out and about at the mines, which I really enjoyed. And this was in Colorado. I got to go to Aspen for work all the time, Steamboat Springs. It was awesome, drive around and see different things and get stuff done and make sure that the company was in compliance, but also that the people that were running the equipment understood what they needed to do and make sure I had a relationship with them. I worked in Denver at the time, and people from these different pits and quarries, and we had like 50 different locations. People might come into Denver for a training opportunity and be in our office. And because I knew them, but I was maybe sometimes the only person that knew all of them, they would come try to visit me when I was in Denver. And I remember, I was very technical at the time. I remember saying to my husband, oh, I like it when there's meetings, but then I'm very busy talking to everybody and I have to get this done. And he just said, don't you understand that talking to them and having a relationship is what you're doing? And that's the most important thing that you can be doing. And I didn't. He had to explain that to me. And from that point forward, I understood the value of building relationships with people. I know that sounds silly, but if you're kind of a technical person, you think the most important thing you can do is be technically great.
Yeah.
It's only true if you can be effective as well as strong technically.
Right.
So that I've taken that throughout my career. So I then worked in different roles in operations, and I also worked in business strategy. I worked in pricing, which was kind of, might not think about pricing rocks, but it's actually very important. I mean, it's a very high volume business. It's kind of a commodity, but not exactly. So how to leverage pricing and work with the sales team and understand what sales is doing. So I got to work in all different kinds of parts of this big international business, which was really valuable. And I stayed in that industry doing different roles. I switched companies a few times. I moved from Denver to Atlanta. I worked in Colorado Springs for a while and switched companies even after I got to Atlanta. So, just what I'm trying to say is I got to see a lot of different things in different ways from a perspective that wasn't common to other people in the business. So that's been very helpful in my career.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to go all the way back. What got you into geology, mining, and rocks in the first place?
Well, that's a great question. I didn't grow up in a mining family or a mining town. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I just always like spending time outside. So I had that. I went to college on an athletics scholarship, and I was a swimmer, so I really enjoyed that. But I was mostly not thinking about my career. I was mostly thinking about what team I wanted to be on and who my coach was and things like that when I started college. So I started off on a certain career path, a certain academic path, and I didn't want to do it. And then I needed to switch, and I thought about what else could I do and what did I really like? And I really like science. And I was able to finish, again, having a scholarship. You don't just figure it out. You get to get in and out on your scholarship. So I was able to switch to geology, and I really enjoyed it. And I liked the professors, I liked the subject, and it doesn't maybe seem technical. It's extremely math and science oriented. I got to kind of explore all those different areas academically. And I had an advisor. I had a summer internship, and I had an advisor who said, you need to get a master's degree. So I did that right after that, and then was able to start working in the mining industry right after that.
So then we take your career and you're really focusing on subject matter expertise and really being that technical expert.
Right.
And then at some point you pivoted more into leadership roles. You kind of, using kind of that analogy I often use, you moved from being a player on the field to a little more of that head coach role where you're calling plays and you're making that shift. What was it beyond your conversation with your husband that kind of sparked that for you that made you say, I kind of think I want to lead?
Well, even going back further, when I was a kid, my dad had a business, and he had started it when I was about 5, and I saw him run this business, and it was a technical business, but he was the president of this company. And so I kind of understood the hustle of working for yourself and how much needs to happen if you're growing and committed to something. And I never really followed in his footsteps. He was in a totally different field. But what I learned from that was that and also through sports, you actually have a lot to give. If you're interested in giving, you have a lot to give. And I always felt like I had a lot to give, and I wanted to give beyond a technical role that I was doing. I thought I had more to learn and more to give to help grow a business. And so I think that's what was the underlying why am I doing this. And again, I really would talk to my dad about my career and what I'm doing. And at one point, I got a promotion kind of out of the technical world and into some business development. And I'd gotten a nice raise. And my dad, by the way, worked in Silicon Valley. So I said, "Oh, Dad, I got this really nice raise." And he said, "That's great, but you're worth 4 times that." And I was like, "What?" And so he really helped me be like, "Why are you limiting yourself? And you think this is great. It is great. Congratulations. What do you want to do with business? You can grow. Find your limits. And if you find them, go find another place to find your limits or explore if that's what you're just kind of, from inside propelled to do." So I would say, why did I change is because I have this entrepreneurial spirit. I have this desire to grow and build. I have this desire to improve and get better and be with people who want to do the same thing. And I can do that in this way through business by growing and changing my career path. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. So I've had on this podcast, we've had guests that have been in leadership roles in the medical industry, medical world, military world, large Fortune 500 company, pizza, for example, industrial parts, but we haven't really had industrial manufacturing or mining. So when you think about what makes leadership either really rewarding or challenging or frankly just unique in the mining industry, what are some of the things that for outsiders that don't know your world that they should? What makes it a little bit different or challenging?
They should know that we're almost everywhere, first of all, and they don't know it. And that's fine by the mining community. We don't need to be your worst nightmare. We're happily mining in your community for the things that you need, whether it's, whatever, a zillion different metals or industrial minerals or just sand and gravel. It's all very important, and we should not be impacting you. That's the first thing I want everyone to know. But as a leader, what's exciting about leading it is in a mine. It's so cool to me to go to a quarry and see what's called the mine development, the way the mine has looked over time. Because you don't just start a mine and finish it in a day. It's decades. It can be over 100 years that a mine's in business. And to me, a well-developed mine looks really nice. There's certain things that are easier about mining some types of rock than others. But it went in a nice hard rock mine. It just looks really cool. It looks like it's an architect has been there, and in a way there has been, and someone's made a plan. But it's taken decades of people to follow this plan to make it efficient and effective. And I always appreciate everybody's role in the mine and making something work together over the long term. That's to me the coolest thing about mining is seeing how many things had to go right for decades to have a productive mine still be looking great and running effectively.
And so it sounds like in that industry, if we extend that a little bit, folks stay in that industry, in that world, maybe even working in that mine for a long time. Is that fair?
Yeah. I have a coworker whose grandfather worked for a mine for 42 years, and then he worked in that same industry. That's pretty common. Mining people that are attracted to mining for different reasons. If you work in a mine, it's often because you like to work outside and be outside. That's a big part of it. And you like to be independent. You're not on a line, which is important, but it's just a different nature of work. You're expected to act very independently and make decisions remotely in a lot of cases.
So we've got this kind of rich history of an industry, and even down to the company, right? Where maybe you have family members that have been there a long time. So you have all that connection and commitment. I would imagine being a female senior executive and leader is not as common in that industry. Is that fair?
That is fair, but it is changing. Yes, it is definitely fair.
So what have you found as either challenges or opportunities as a female leader in the mining industry?
Well, that's a great question. And it's changed over time. So I started in the industry when I was 23, maybe 24. And, now I'm 25 plus years later. So what's changed in the industry? Well, let's see. What's it like to be a woman in the mining industry? It depends on your role in the mining industry. I think it. This is hard. It seems like it should be a really easy answer. What I want to say is the opportunities are there for everybody today to enter at any level and do more. At the time that I entered, it was a lot of confusion about who was I and why was I there. And in some cases, this is because, as I described, I was doing environmental permitting. This was the 90s. Yes, there had been permits before, but it was kind of new. So why are we listening to this person? And she doesn't know anything about this. I definitely got feedback from people about not understanding how to work with everyone. I had to take that in and see if I could do that, learn how to talk to technical people. I'm not sure if I'm answering this well. If you have an inner drive and you are able to be collaborative and understand the give and take over the long term, you will be successful. If you want to run around and grab all the gold coins for yourself, it won't work in mining because it's a very collaborative industry. So you have to have that approach, whether you're male or female. No one can know everything about mining, and that's true for men and women. There are other just kind of unique things about it that I had some really wonderful people take me under their wing and make sure that I understood technical things about the way crushers and screens worked. For example, when I didn't grow up with a technical background, like someone who worked on a farm, male or female, would have a huge advantage just having a lot of technical skills. So I think that was a disadvantage for me. And I definitely appreciate people that were like, oh, you need to understand how this works so that you're, contributing to the conversation instead of saying, I don't understand these things. At one company I worked for, we would have a crusher school, and I sat in on crusher school. It was a week-long class just to learn how to operate crushers. And again, I remember saying to my husband, I said, I feel like I'm in guy school, and I did not ever go to guy school before. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I didn't learn about all the kinds of lubrication and greases and the way that valves could work. So you really have to take the time to understand the technical impacts of whatever it is that you're working on to be seen as somebody who's a contributor, whether you're male or female. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's some thoughts on being a woman in mining.
I think that's great. So now let's just move on the other side. So then you had to learn some of that technical expertise, learn how to talk to different people. I love the point you make that it's a very collaborative industry. You can't just make it about yourself. You're not going to last very long there. Might be some other industries you can get away with that. Doesn't sound like mining as one of them. Mm-hmm. Very much a team sport, sounds like. And so then at some point in your career, you said, all right, I've decided I am going to fully pull myself off the playing field over to the sidelines with the clipboard, which is much more of what you're doing today as a more president, COO kind of role. What was, so let's go back in time to when you first made that transition. What was the biggest learning for you from fully moving officially away from being the technical expert to the leader who's helping to set strategy and direction and priorities and keeping everyone playing nice in the sandbox, all those sorts of leadership, head coaching kind of roles?
Well, I had to learn about finance. I did not know about finance, being a technical expert, and understand what was going on with sales and what's an average selling price, and how do we I may know about costing, but how do we really understand how the business is making money at the end of the day? I had to learn a lot more about sales and what is hard about sales, what's easy about sales, what do salespeople actually do? What do salespeople need to do their jobs better? What does customer service do? How do they interact with the quarries? The mining business is a little bit weird because inside the business, 95% of the people are going to be making the product and 5% are doing the rest. So when you enter that business, you might think operations is it. It's all about operations. Well, of course it is for the 95%, but it's the other 5% that are really integral to the business or they wouldn't be there. So we need salespeople, we need finance people, we need IT people. We need to have a plan for all these things. And, operations has to be great at what it's doing, but all these other areas do too, and they're super important, and they have to be done really well too. Yeah.
So it reminds me, way back when I was getting my MBA, we both got our MBAs from GLC. Mine was a full-time MBA. Yours was the executive MBA. And I remember in my last semester, I had a tax professor, and her name was Connie Kurtz, and it was corporate tax was the class. And she opened the class this way. She said, this class is a mile long and an inch deep. The class is not designed to teach you how to do corporate tax. The class is designed to know what questions you need to be asking, either of your accountant, your CFO, whatever it happens to be. So you're educated enough. I wanted to share that example because is that how you viewed your learning in those other parts of the business? Was it about knowing what questions to ask? Or did you feel like you needed to go in and become an expert in finance, for example?
Oh, no, I definitely knew that I was not going to become an expert at finance, but I needed to understand who was successful in each area and what made them successful at it. So, there's a lot of commonality. Are you a good leader? Are you clear with your message? Do you set expectations? That's true no matter what your role is in the company, if you're 2 years into your career or 30 years into your career. The other thing that people need to do across all these functions is receive feedback in a way that they're going to do something with that feedback, and share feedback in a way that they have an expectation whoever they're sharing with will do something with it. Another thing everybody needs KPIs, whether you're in accounts payable or if you're in sales. So how do you know if you've had a good day or not? What are the KPIs relevant to this job? And are they clearly understood by the person and the group doing that job? And are they reported so that others can know if they're doing a good job? I think of them now as super business basics, but it's the kind of thing that you just see again and again. If those things aren't there, there's going to be problems until those things are put in place.
Yeah, I love that. So just learning how to not only get a better understanding of what makes people successful in those roles and the leader successful in those roles and how they work, but also then how do we put the right metrics in place so everyone kind of knows how they're doing. They've got a scorecard. And it goes all the way back to your swimming days. You knew how you performed on an event. There was a clear number that showed you how you did. So how can we give that same thing to everybody else?
And you also know exactly how long the 200 free is. It's 200 yards or meters, right? Yeah. It's not like infinite and I never finished and I never started. No, it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And hopefully you made your time. And I see that a lot. People kind of just blend things forever. Like, no, there's discrete periods that you need to be looking at, whether it's by the hour or by the week or by the day. And then you need to be looking at all of those things, not just, well, last year I did this. Okay, well, what happened hour by hour or week by week? And how did you use that feedback as you were going to get somewhere?
Holly, that's a great perspective because when we treat it just as this thing that kind of bleeds, it's hard to look at one discrete moment in time and say, what could you have done in this moment to make you more efficient or effective? Because there's no beginning, middle, and end. It's just this long thing with numbers attached to it versus chunking it like that. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward to present day. As you sit here today as kind of president, COO, what are some of the leadership challenges or goals that keep you up at night? The things that you think about with the business and the people in the business that you really want to make sure you're supporting them well and leading them well?
Well, the most important thing now is in my role is the customer. So, and then of course, how does our team fit into the customer? So the customer has to be understood. They have to get what they need. We have to remember that we're in a competitive situation. We have to have new and interesting offerings to them. We have to really understand whether or not we're solving a problem for them or if we're just, hey, we shipped it to you. What do you need? No, like what's our ongoing relationship with them? We're a smaller company, so we need to be different than our competitors. And I mention all this because this also informs who do we hire, because I need everybody who works here to also understand and care about those things. And we need to have great customer service people, but we also need to have the people who load trucks know that they're loading a truck that's maybe not our customer, and maybe it's just a trucking company that's an intermediary, but they're still taking something back of the attitude or the service that they receive from us to our customer, which then can enhance or not enhance our relationship. And then other things, just like, our invoice is easy to read. If not, why not? Come on, like everything is a customer experience. So I think that's my biggest thought. And are we being very clear with who we are, what we do, and how we can help other businesses grow? So that's the thing that keeps me up at night the most and it's not customer retention. We actually have a really great we really have great customer retention. Our company makes ingredients. We feed a lot of dairy cows. We sell to feed mills in Wisconsin. That's where we are. And as we say in the business, cows have to eat every day. Well, we want to make sure they want to eat the minerals that we're selling as part of their diet, and that we're having an offering that's, give them a reason to buy from us. What's our compelling reason to buy from us instead of a competitor? So, what's our marketing look like? What's our messaging around that? And then does everybody understand how our core values relate to what our market needs? Like, maybe these are too big of a topic, Brandon. It's never just one thing, but it's all these things to make sure that our actions are matching our customers' needs.
Well, I think it makes total sense when I think about the business, because if it is so operationally heavy, you talked about 95%, it's really going to be more operational, kind of getting the work done and doing it really well. And then there's customers on the other end. There needs to be some kind of a connection point there that is really thinking about, which is your role, thinking about how do we make this experience great? How do we make the culture, the kind of culture that we want in the business? So every time a customer interacts with us, they just can feel and smell and just taste that culture, and that it becomes the differentiator. So I think it's really common when I talk to presidents and COOs, they view themselves almost as protector of the culture. And so I'm hearing a lot of that in kind of your conversation with me here today. So a lot around kind of keeping the pulse on the customer and making sure that it's customer centric. Any other big areas that you think about when you think about kind of keeping your team focused, engaged, and even thinking about even future pipeline of talent coming into the company?
Sure. So focus and engage is the everyday game. I learned about. I mentioned my dad. I also have a stepfather, and my stepfather is from Hawaii, but he's Japanese. His family moved from Japan, and so he would introduce the culture of Japan to me and my family, and he would like to go see these. I think it's pronounced taiko drummers, and he'd get really excited. And there's a big Japanese festival in Atlanta we went to. If you haven't been, you should go to it. It's really cool. Anyway, I learned from learning about taiko drummers over time that there are clubs in Japan that gather, like a neighborhood club, and they play together and they practice, and they only practice the same song.
Really?
Yeah.
So why just the one song?
Because they haven't perfected it, and there's always something to learn if you play the same song again and again. That's my guess. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert at taiko drumming, but I thought that was profoundly weird. Like in our culture, we would never, great, let's do the same thing again next Thursday at 7:30. Like we don't do that. But I think it's like stunningly different than our culture. And I think there's beauty in that, and there's meaning in that. Obviously, there's meaning in that. This makes a lot of sense if you think about it. So the point is, I'm okay with doing the same thing over and over again because it's still worth doing. Connecting our culture to our customer is like the thing that I get up and do every day, and I need to do that. And I need to have other people that are passionate or at least engaged or interested in doing that. So it's every day is focused on the fundamentals. We have to grow and innovate, and of course we have to do that too, but we have to be very passionate about the fundamentals.
I think that is so awesome and consistent and congruent with the business you're in, because it is so much about the study of time and pressure and kind of the same thing every day, right? Right? Yeah. And so then you're talking about that, being intentional about that rhythm and trying to perfect it, and just knowing that good things happen when that consistent pressure and intentionality is applied every day over decades.
Yes, and it's not boring, by the way. It's never boring at the plant. There's always, maybe if someone has a boring afternoon, but there's always something changing with natural materials. There's always something changing because of the weather conditions. A customer wants a different spec. We're testing something. The natural rock that's delivered to us can change slightly. So it's not like we're folding a piece of paper in half every day. I don't want to make it sound boring. It's endlessly fascinating to just kind of iterate around what we're doing,
Yeah. So I ask all my guests on the Leadership Foundry podcast this question. So if there was one a life hack for us on how we could be better leaders starting tomorrow, what might that be? What's that one practical tip that, that you've learned in your career that, if leaders started doing this thing every day, kind of like you've talked about, it's going to help her or him get better?
It's to treat everybody in your company like they want to be in. It's to develop every member of your company. That's my biggest secret, my biggest takeaway. And again, I keep mentioning my family. I also have a daughter. When we lived in Atlanta, she was in a program for like gifted kids, which was really nice. She was able to do that in elementary school, and she enjoyed that. And when we got to Chicago, and we lived there when she was in middle school, I said, would you like to take a test? You'd have to go to a different school than our neighborhood school. Would you like to take a test to get into to see if you can stay in a gifted program? She said no. And after a year or two, I asked her, I said, do you ever miss being in that gifted program? And she said, no, Mom, in Chicago, everybody's in the gifted program. They treat us all the same. Everybody's supposed to be in science fair. Everybody gets opportunity to do new and interesting things. And I thought that's so much better than just having this one set of people getting to do stuff. It's so much better learning style. The learning style really does apply to everybody. You have to have opportunities for enrichment and development for everybody. So if that's everybody doing a personal development plan, which we do for 100% of our employees, if it's encouraging customer visits for accounting, whatever, do it. Please do it. Please get them out and see things. You'll benefit from it. Just yesterday, we had a visit with a farm that we sell to, and our operations person came along with us, and of course, our salesperson led the call. Fantastic, loved it. It paints all the pictures for us. We get a much better sense of what's urgent to that customer and how we can relate to them. And we got out of the office. We had time to reflect on things. Everyone learned something from that, and we were able to come back and share it. And there's probably 5 other people that would say, "I'd like to go to a farm. I want to get out there and see how they do that." So just keeping it in mind, enrichment's for everybody.
Did you get to see the cows?
We did not see the cows yesterday, but they were in a different part of the operation. But yeah, love to go see the cows and walk through the cows when we can too.
Nice. Excellent. I love that. I love that just general idea of helping people grow and challenge them to grow and give them new and rich experiences to get them growing, whether that's just learning other parts of the business or getting that wonderful, powerful experience of seeing how the work that they do every day has meaning and translates to the customers and those hungry bovines, which there's different parts to it too. Like it's really important just to leave and have a different routine. Like, okay, I didn't go into the dryer room today. I got to go to a farm. That's cool. Or we have our plant crew go visit the quarry where we buy the rock from. Great. They get to leave and go see it and see where our product comes from. They also get to see what the other operation looks like and meet other people that kind of do what they do across the lake, if you were. But to me, the most important thing is time to get away and reflect. And that's not just for your executive team, that's for all of your employees. Everybody will benefit from time to reflect about how they can connect this to their job. I think that's such an opportunity area that 99% of companies don't take advantage of. We all know executive teams get away, right? They do getaways, and they'll do like the 2 days away to do planning or whatever. But to think about just the folks in the day-to-day operations getting that opportunity to step away and experience another business or experience the customer, it doesn't happen as often as it could or should. So I think that's such a great learning for us. Well, Holly, this was fantastic. If people want to learn more about you, want to learn more about the company, where can they go?
Well, our website is glcminerals.com. So GLC Minerals is the company name. So you can learn about the company and our core principles and what we do and learn about our markets there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
This was absolutely great. Thanks for so much of the nuggets and wisdom you shared today. It was fantastic. Keep up the great work. And I love the fact that you said mining's everywhere. We may not see it, and that's good. If we don't see it, we're not supposed to see it. But knowing it's just that fundamental infrastructure in almost every community is a good reminder for us. So thank you for the great work that you and your team continue to do.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciated my conversation with Holly today for several reasons. One, I learned a lot about mining. I learned not only how passionate Holly is about mining, but it is one of those industries that is around us all the time, and hopefully we don't even see it. Maybe it's because it's underneath us. But regardless, it is so central to our day-to-day needs of our community. And Holly reminds us that it is a long-tenured industry. People stay there a long time, and relationships really matter. That was one of the big learnings that she had moving from a technical expert into that leadership role. It was the importance of relationships. She also learned she had to learn more about other sides of the business and get exposed to other parts of the business in order to lead effectively. And then finally, that translates to how she leads today. She tries to get her team exposed to not only the customers, but other aspects of the business so they're growing and learning too. It's so operationally focused, it's easy for folks to kind of stay in their box and silo, and she really wants them to see beyond that because it'll help the entire team get better. I'm sure there were many other takeaways you had, and regardless, the key is, what is that one takeaway from my conversation with Holly today you want to put in place starting tomorrow that's going to make you a better leader in 2023?